Greetings, this is Shadow Control. Today our guest is Zhanna. Zhanna, could you please say how you position yourself?
Most likely, I position myself as a person who has a little more of some sacred knowledge than ordinary people. I call myself the one who knows, so I really know and understand certain things.
The one who knows, can we say it's a witch?
I haven't grown to be a witch yet, because a witch, ведьма in Russian, means the knowing mother. It's a woman who possesses worldly wisdom. I'm only 36 years old, and I'm yet far from worldly wisdom, but yes, I consider myself knowledgeable.
Zhanna, could you please tell us how you felt your connection with the world of magic for the first time? And did it happen intuitively or in some other way?
It all started in my childhood. When I was 4 years old, my grandmother died. My relatives didn't know she had died. She was at the hospital. I went off into hysterics. I was a 4-year-old child. I was yelling. They couldn't understand what was wrong with me. They took my temperature. That's how I felt the death of my blood kin. It was at the age of 4. I surely don't remember that hysterics, but my parents and my elder brother told me that it had really happened. The next morning, they found out that at that very time, my grandmother died in the hospital. When I was 9, I was given my first fortune-telling deck. That is, my mother and father already understood that I had certain inclinations. I've been interested in esotericism since childhood. There were some movies and books. I talked to trees, saw some dwarfs. Everything was there. And around the age of 12, in my dream, for the first time, I saw the deceased whom I couldn't possibly know. Those were some people from our king. I told their names to my parents, and everyone was shocked. Around the age of 13, I started to learn and go deeper into all of this because I realized that I was different in some way. I mean, at 13, I realized that I wasn't like everyone else.
Do you remember what was in those dreams? What did you see?
The deceased started coming to me. That is, probably since the age of 12, I've been in permanent contact with the world of the dead, so to say. They came, some talked, some didn't. If they talked, they asked me to convey something. It wasn't always blood relatives. It happened that it was someone's wife who wanted to say something to her son, while in our family she was, let's say, my uncle's wife. So there were such moments. My parents didn't believe it at first, but when I called names and what to convey, everyone understood that I couldn't find it out from anywhere.
But those were mostly acquaintances, right?
Yes, sure. Any episodes with complete strangers, people whom I didn't know, never occurred.
Is it still so, or can people whom you don't know come at present?
No, it still goes through the kin. I was about 20 years old when I started going deeper into the kin, into the ancestral system. I started to study what it is and how to work with it. I drew a tree, let's say a family tree, and started to interact. I began to understand why they particularly come.
Could you please share what this understanding is and why do these weird people come to you?
I think that my task in this kin is to promote my kin through esotericism because each of us comes to our kin with a certain task. It has to be understood, accepted, and if we fulfill this task, we live well and happily. If we somehow refuse this task, then various unpleasant things happen in our life. I realized that my task in the family is exactly to develop my kin through esotericism, through magic. When I understood this, certain unpleasant moments in my life ended.
Do I understand correctly? The task you speak of is a task during your life, right?
Right.
And if the task is not fulfilled, then the dead relatives actually come.
Somewhere they pushed me, somewhere they taught me because I didn't have an advisor. There were certain points, certain dreams. I woke up and realized that I was moving in the right direction. That is, when I felt lost, what to do, where to go. I don't know how to do it, but I understand that I am drawn there. If I don't do that, I feel bad and some events occur in my life. Then these very dreams told me that I was going in the right direction, and in principle, they even showed me how to do it correctly.
Does it happen automatically, or do you form a request?
No. It definitely doesn't come from me. I have no influence whatsoever on who comes to me in dreams. I never even went to bed and asked, "Show me." Most of the time, if I had a question, an answer just somehow came to me, either in a dream or in a ridiculous situation. Say, I was riding a bus, reading signs on billboards, and I found exactly the phrase that answered my question. Thus, I somehow learned to read signs everywhere since I was a child. There are signs everywhere, but people often don't notice them. When you see these signs, you understand that it's a direct message from someone to you.
So can you say that in the beginning of your way, you were moving solely intuitively?
Yes, like a blind kitten, absolutely.
Were there any mistakes in the way?
Yes, sure, but mistakes appeared when I already began to work and go deeper into practical magic because I started with a demonic egregore. I started working with evil spirits, and it was the most difficult period in my life, the most frightening one. My psyche was badly affected. It didn't endure when I was 15. Voices and constant calls began. It was real hell. I approached my parents and said, "Let's go to the hospital. I have schizophrenia."
Did you tell them yourself?
Yes, I said it myself because it was no longer endurable. It hindered me from living. There were voices all the time. They prevented me from falling asleep. They asked me some questions or spoke something all the time. There were times when I woke up and wrote down incantations. In my dreams, I hovered over some villages and knew that I had to burn a house down there or do something bad, that kind of format. So we went to the doctors and they tested me. I underwent various tests. I remember myself passing all this. They concluded that there were no abnormalities in my psyche. They did CT scanning and something else I no longer remember. So basically, there was a moment of my immature psyche. And if we talk about the early development of practice, a person should actually start more with theory. When you immediately plunge into practice, be prepared that your cuckoo can whistle hard. Not everyone is ready for that, and not everyone can survive it and remain a mentally healthy person.
Zhanna, this is a very interesting point. Can you tell us more about that? When you started working with the evil spirits, first of all, how did it happen? How did you decide that you wanted to work with the evil spirits? And secondly, what exactly are evil spirits? And what were your goals in working with them? Like, how does it happen?
I will explain. At the age of 15, even 13, when I started practicing, there was this teenage egocentrism. What do you want? To make it quick and interesting, to have results immediately, and so that you can see, touch, and feel it. The first books I began to read were about demonology. As far as I remember, it was some kind of Russian folklore, something related to low-frequency creatures. When you simply call upon this low-frequency force with your thoughts, it is very different from addressing gods. There you need to beg, there you really need to win the favor of high-frequency forces. But if we speak of working with evil spirits, in this case, a thought is enough and they immediately come. I performed some rituals, tried some things, wrote certain things myself, and at one fine moment, a voice started sounding in my head. It happened when I was falling asleep. There was a clear call by my name, and then it kept going. Later, there were moments when in my sleep I was told what to do.
Did evil spirits tell you that?
Yes, they did. They told me I didn't see them, but only heard voices. The voice was neither male nor female. It was, a vivid whisper like, "Zhanna, Zhanna." There were moments like that. Evil spirit directly dictated to me what I should do and how. Now I know many things without books as to how to do it correctly. This force dictated that to me.
So when the evil spirits came, did that people no longer come, or could they come at the same time?
Not at that time. When I started practicing graveyard magic, then yes, it became more acute. When I worked with evil spirits, there were constant voices and demands to give them a task. In other words, I put an evil spirit in my service with a certain ritual, and he constantly asked for tasks. I took the path of blackness, so to say. I did hexes and many other things. That is, I harmed people in different ways and broke the balance at a certain point. For breaking the balance, when good and evil must be respected, but I, so to say, spat right and left with this bile. I was charged a very high price for that afterwards.
Which one?
I buried my entire family. I lost a child. I buried my parents. I buried my brother. This whole chain that happened literally within 3 years, I was shown and told that it was a payment, which I had to give because in some points I had messed up. In others, let's say I was struck back or paid it off wrong. Because when you start practicing, you want results, but you don't know about safety rules yet. And when you don't have an advisor, you only find out about it when you make mistakes. When you get hit in the head for it, you realize you've done something wrong. So from such points, there eventually grew sort of an unpaid debt to these forces. Therefore, after a while, I started moving away from that, but since it is easier for me to do low-frequency work, as I am on low frequencies myself, I went into graveyard magic.
Before we proceed to the very interesting topic of graveyard magic, may I ask you a few questions about the evil spirits?
Yes.
As far as I understand, it was the evil spirits who told you that this was some kind of the payback for actually using their services, right?
Yes. Moreover, they didn't let me out of that egregore for a very long time. I had dreams. They offered me various riches and something else. It's difficult to explain what it looks like in a dream. Let's say a very handsome young man comes and shows me one hand, he's holding a coin, and the other hand, he's holding something else there, and it's kind of a choose. In a dream, I knew, since I already worked with the astral plane at that time, I realized that it was an astral entity and it shouldn't be trusted. It was just a guise. I was aware that if I pick up a coin now, I would again fall into this demonic egregore. However, in addition to what comes in dreams, there are also various special effects which severely affect your psyche. When you attract these forces, even on those very payoffs or something else, many moments happen that make horror movies look like nothing more than childish nonsense. If you tell someone, they won't believe it is possible.
That would be very interesting.
Once I was cleaning a person. I did the cleaning through evil spirits. There is a certain ritual when you put an evil spirit on a candle and the cleaning takes place. So at midnight, I heard a loud child's laughter outside my window. It was totally insane while I live on the 8th floor. Such a special effect. And there was another case. I was doing a ritual and lights in my whole apartment went off. It was the beginning of the practical path, so I ran. Fear was terrible. My heart was beating. I tried to open the door wouldn't open. The door had no handle, just a round wooden handle, no deadbolt. I was forcing my way into the door so hard that it almost flew out. There were moments like that. Also through a mirror. Very often when I worked with mirrors, an entity would come through the mirror and I could clearly see its outlines.
In the mirror itself?
In the mirror itself, yes. When you work with this egregore, you must have no fear, otherwise you will be devoured, you will become a fodder. Here you must have willpower, you must have power over them, meaning they must work for you. So these numerous nuances certainly led to mistakes. Not every person, especially at the age of 15, is capable. Let's say they will mock a person, wrap him or her around their finger, and do whatever they want.
And what do these evil spirits look like in the mirror?
You know how? Usually it's just a dark silhouette, like some substance of dense dark energy. I cannot say that I've seen someone's face or a hooded head. It's just a cluster of dark energy that has distinct human-like contours.
So you can characterize these evil spirits as a cloud of energy?
Evil spirits, yes, they are. In general, like such a small cloud of energy. If we talk about superior hierarchies, the demonology of demons in particular, through a mirror they may be seen just like contours of a human. That's the creepiest thing which can be seen in general, because when I'm telling you, it's like, well, but when you see it with your own eyes and realize that you shouldn't be afraid, afraid, jump up and run away because you could do worse to yourself now. It's really creepy there. Then you have a sensation. Either you've gone crazy or it did happen. That's the kind of sensation going on in your head. Is it a reality or a dream?
Evil spirits are the lowest strength, aren't they? And then...
Yes, evil spirits are, so to say, slaves, a slave force. Above it, there is a shepherd, a demon, and there are more and more superior in the hierarchy. There are cemetery spirits, which are also a separate subject. Basically, I tried not to go further. In other words, it was enough for me to do little things. Minor works are mostly done through evil spirits. If a work is bigger, it is already done through demons.
Is there anyone above the demons too?
Yes, sure.
And who is at the very top of the hierarchy?
What do you mean? There is a Satan himself who is above everyone else. Well, I call it a global low-frequency energy. You know, when there are wars, when there is mass bloodshed, there is actually a huge accumulation of the higher hierarchy, something like that.
So basically all the things that had happened, revolutions, wars, and so on, are all interconnected, right?
Definitely. All this is interconnected. Even more than that, people who come to power and start wars are actually chosen to lead to some terrible action. A war, a mass terrorist attack, or something else. As a rule, these people are controlled by these entities. They manipulate a person in such a way that he cannot distinguish where there is his own will and where there are imprints.
So what should happen to a person in his choice or in his life so that some entity would seize the power over them?
Firstly, a desire for suicide. When a person starts thinking that he wants to kill himself, even without making an attempt, a certain entity comes to him immediately, already walking around and waiting for him to make his step. Because when a person kills oneself, there is a tremendous energy discharge to which entities of various types instantly flock together. Or when there is such a stupid idea as to sell one's soul to the devil. The devil doesn't need this soul at all because he is not interested in such unreasonable people, so to say. But with such an appeal, a person already opens himself up to low-frequency entities. Secondly, there are people who blaspheme. If we take the Christian egregore and the demonic egregore, these are two egregores that oppose each other. If a person begins to blaspheme, speak badly of this religion, he can throw an icon or break it. These fellows come to him at once and say, "It's our passenger." Thus, they can rope him in and do all sorts of nasty things through him.
But the person doesn't understand it, does he?
He often doesn't. I'll repeat, if a person has not yet fully developed an inner awareness of the path that he follows, worldly wisdom, some principles, if this is not formed in a person, he usually becomes a fodder. At first, he is controlled like a puppet. Some drunken murders, thefts, insults, or something else of that kind happen through him. Then he is just driven to, he either becomes a drunkard or kills himself. In other words, he is used like a rag doll, so to say.
So does this person give some energy to these creatures?
Of course. Any emotions, fear, anger, rage, all this is low-frequency energy that they feed on. Hence, when a person is controlled, he starts being aggressive, starts drinking alcohol, thus lowering his vibrational background even more. He begins to provoke chaos, destruction, emotions of fear and pain around him. He beats someone, humiliates someone, can kill someone, and so on. This way, he is led to the point when he becomes a tool of such mischief.
Roughly speaking, he lowers his frequency more and more, right?
Exactly.
What else can lower one's frequency besides aggression?
Fear. Fear is the very strong feeling that provokes an energy discharge and removes various protections from us. When a person is afraid, he is vulnerable and open to invisible settlers. Let's put it so. Fear is probably one of the most The rest are less powerful: anger, rage, sorrow, but they also have low frequency.
Envy.
Envy, yes.
This is also an interesting point. How do you feel internally? How did you understand that you had to work specifically with low frequencies?
Attraction. I'm drawn there. I'm interested.
You mean intuitively?
Intuitively. I understand that when I speak and dirty swear words pour out of me instead of normal words, I am now holding myself in hand with you, let's say. Then, of course, I feel what vibrations I actually live on, and I understand what vibrations it's more convenient for me to work at.
Is it some kind of a feeling of inner comfort?
Yes, inner comfort, sometimes sort of bile and malicious joy is flowing. I understand that these are low-frequency emotions, but I am comfortable in them.
But still, you probably aspire to something else, aren't you? Please share. It is very interesting.
Of course I do.
Like all people, do you aspire for that very love, let's say? Given that love has a high frequency, how much does it resonate with the fact that you work with low frequencies?
I separate. If we talk about working at low frequencies or about love in the family for dear and near people, how to say, love is a very powerful energy which can even fight with various lower astral entities. But there's a lot of love in my life, more for animals than for people. There is such a point.
Why so?
After many years of working with people, I became disappointed. Disappointment is largely due to people's bile and the way they carefully cover it up. Disappointment from wearing masks, from duplicity, because often people come to appointments saying, "I'm so goody-goody, but I've been hurt. Zhanna, help me, clean it up." However, I started looking, figure out the situation, make a diagnosis, and see that the person is so dark from the inside. He has done so much shit to people. Now he just wants all this to be removed from him, but he will continue doing it. I see right through people like that. After many years of working with such people, I realized that I don't want to help them. May they live their own life and boil in their own shit.
It turns out that these creatures, evil spirits and so on, that are in the service of a person who comes in contact with them, they can do both good things and bad things?
Yes. Cleaning may also be done through evil spirits and through cemeteries, and those cleanings are very powerful and good. Again, it's energy that can be used for good or for destruction. Of course, this egregore implies mainly working with destructive stuff, so people who work in it do more negative things anyway. But it is also possible to ensure cleaning and protection with the help of evil spirits.
What do people who work mostly with negativity, like with evil spirits and with certain entities, get out of that? Just comfort?
No, benefits.
Like material benefits?
It's a contract. It's not always material. It depends on what a person wants. Some people want money, some people want fame, while someone wants other people to be around so that he's not alone. And as a rule, we give away something very important for that. There were people who came to me and said, "Can you attach an entity to me? I'm ready to live out my old age with money, and I don't care what happens to my granddaughter." Thus, people are sometimes ready to pawn their children as a payment, to pawn their grandchildren, their lives, and so on.
Are people able to pawn their relatives?
There is a certain contract with certain force. Not everything may be voiced, unfortunately. But there are certain things when you can really pawn not even your own life, but that of a blood relative. And the person will really bathe in glory, have money that will come easily. But eventually there will come a moment when that force will need to take a certain person. And then anything can happen to that person. She, a granddaughter, may become a prostitute or a drug addict. In other words, these superior forces, let's call them superior although they are actually low, they can do whatever they want, take what they want, when and how they want.
So does blood kinship play a certain role here? Does it matter?
Of course, because for a person it's the closest, sometimes the dearest. The payment must be appropriate. Just like a payoff. If you want something global, you have to pay with something global. Again, no force will break the balance and do more than what you pay for. So if you want to have a lot of money, be a famous figure and so on, be ready to pay a high price.
So basically, all famous personalities pay for it in some way.
Moreover, behind many stars and political figures, there are people who are engaged in cooperation with dark forces.
Intentionally?
Yes. Very often and in a large percentage. They get serious protection because they are surrounded by constant attention. It's an impact. Imagine someone being watched on TV. Some people admire him, while someone wishes him dead and says, "How annoying you are, your face is on TV," and so on. Of course, this is a powerful job, and very often famous people have their own assistant.
You say a person is being watched on TV, and there's a lot of emotion from people whom he doesn't even know. Like, how serious is this power, in fact?
You know, sometimes it even comes to the formation of an egregore. There is a persona, a star who is believed in. A lot of people worship and emulate him. And an egregore is formed around him. It is something energetically powerful, which a lot of people give their energy to. Even later, if they start hating him, it is still energy that a powerful egregore can transform from negative to positive. And it surely affects when a lot of people wish someone harm. Protection is needed in this case anyway.
Do some entities use this energy too?
Of course.
So they use it on purpose and...
If there is someone behind a person who gives him these benefits by making a contract with a certain entity, of course, this egregore feeds this entity as well. Otherwise, if there is no egregore, the carrier himself will have to share his energy, and he won't last long in this case. When there is a powerful egregore, this energy is drawn from it like from a vessel.
You said that you first worked with evil spirits and then you started doing graveyard magic.
Yes.
Can you tell us more what it actually is?
Generally speaking, the egregore of death is very powerful. It's a completely different territory. These are completely different vibrations. They are very low. This sensation of death, well, I cannot even compare it with anything else. I mean, when I work in a graveyard, this is an inner sensation. Sometimes tears may come involuntarily when I call them. This is already an interaction with something different. Let's take some religion, okay? We come into this world, we may believe in one God or in another, but everyone dies in the same way. Death comes to everyone, regardless of what religion, what egregore, what system, and so on they were in. It's a completely different force, a very powerful one. I work with cemeteries more for myself, for some of my needs. I used to work with people in the past, but at some point I became uninterested and lost the desire to help people. Nowadays, let's say people are so perverted and dark inside that sometimes I just don't want to break the balance. Somebody's eating you up, so let them eat you. You deserve it. Over the years, I've come to realize that I don't want to help anyone.
Does it work somehow selectively for you?
Selectively. Of course, there are people who come and I feel I can help. I feel that I should do that. And it's even without cards for the most part. It's on an intuitive level.
So you work with your clients based on these various sensations, on how much you want to.
Right. I'm not after money like many other practitioners who need as much as possible to make a curse or to cast a spell just to take money. I'm interested in the process itself. I'm interested in analyzing certain cases. I'm interested in personal meetings. When I have a living person in front of me, I am in direct contact with him. I connect to him and feel internally whether it's worth helping him or not.
And how do you work in graveyard, if it's not a secret?
I enjoy working with graveyards. A graveyard is a place where there's also a church. There's a certain energy in that church. People don't get married and do not undergo christening there. There is a certain energy of death in such places.
Funeral specifically, right?
Yes, mostly. While a cemetery is where there's just an area of the cemetery, but no church, if we distinguish the concepts. In a cemetery, I work through the master. Only once I worked through the mistress.
Of the cemetery.
Yes, it's again intuitive. When I came to work in a cemetery for the very first time, I came by intuition. I just mentally turned to some, let's say, collective energy, which is the master, and I needed a certain grave there.
Did you know which one?
I knew what name I needed the grave with.
So it was an order of some kind.
Yes, it was an order. But I went to make a purchase, an offering, so as to get to know that place. And so a dog came, I remember it very clearly, and it just ran forward, sometimes looking back at me. I followed it. When it brought me to this grave, that inner fear, some kind of a horror, along with admiration and awareness that it wasn't a dream. That was a sensation I remembered for the rest of my life. When such a contact occurs, I feel it immediately. When I come to one cemetery, I feel that something is wrong here. Some drunkard has fallen out from behind the fence, it's like an obstacle. Or at some point, everything is covered with snow if it is deep autumn or winter. Well, in that case, there was a clear response. I mostly get responses through animals. When I work at a cemetery where my mother is buried, an owl always comes flying. I even have a picture in my phone. The owl flies in, and I know for sure that it's a response, so I work with the grave. There are also working graves, active ones, so to say, and there are deaf graves, which make no sense to work with.
What does it depend on?
Residual energy. Residual energy, when I interact, I feel that it is active. They still hear me there. They accept my offerings, let's say a commemorative rite that is done on a grave. But when a grave is deaf, I try to manipulate it and there is silence in response.
But these are more recent graves, right?
No, they can be very old. It exactly relates to the residual energy which remains on graves for some time. That's what it gives. I never work with children's graves.
Why?
Because as a rule, when a child is dying, he or she has no awareness of death. And when you work with children's graves, first of all, this is how the most terrible curses are done, for death. If you attach a dead child to a person, it is practically impossible to remove him or her afterwards. That energy is attracted to the living one. It feeds on it.
So the energy is deliberately attached.
Yes, a dead person is attached, but even when a practitioner works with a child's grave, he can also catch that energy on himself. Therefore, as for me, in my entire practice, I never worked with children's graves, and it's a taboo for me. But mostly there are such special effects. From time to time, I hear someone's voice, or I stand near a grave, and it's as if someone gets acquainted with me. I'm next to myself, or I somehow hear fragments of phrases in my head. I clearly understand that I'm in a dialogue. There are moments when animals come. They come clearly, lead me to the needed grave, and then stop. Once I was even looking for the name Ramil, the rarest name for us, and I was taken right to Ramil's grave. This is really, at such moments, I just think, wow, even after working for many years, sometimes I cannot believe it is possible.
Did you ever have cases when, let's say, people who contacted you told you things which surprised you?
Well, there is no such contact like a straightforward conversation. It is usually, point-by-point phrases of some kind.
And what about?
I like sweets, or bring me some vodka, I want to smoke, or let's say I loved her, help my son. At that, I don't know who that son is. There are just some phrases that I hear as a voice in my head, but again, it's not clear a man's voice or a woman's voice.
But these are different voices.
They are different, yes. Evil spirits manifest through a vivid whisper. As a rule, it is something between a male and female voice, but I kind of more feel that it's a man or a woman speaking.
So in some of the rituals, you come into contact with these voices, right?
Yes, exactly.
If there is purposeful work,
If it's a purposeful work, if I need the deceased to take something away from someone or, on the contrary, to attach something to him.
what does that actually mean? Suppose you come into contact with a deceased person, so you attach him to some person, and he's like,
for a certain fee. I pay a fee to the graveyard master and perform a rite on the grave of the deceased. So there is a separate payment to the deceased, a separate work with the master, and I also clearly stipulate in the contract what I want from the deceased. What he should do, whom he should go to, whom he should follow, who he should cling to, and so on.
But it's only his blood relatives, or not necessarily?
No, absolutely not. There is no difference here at all.
So this dead person then consumes energy of a living person?
His residual energy clings to the living. When I attach him to a living person, he begins to feed on that person. Often when I settle a dead person into someone, it happens that the living person gets new taste preferences. For example, he never smoked this brand of cigarettes, but suddenly he is attracted to this particular brand. He never liked this perfume and suddenly decides to like some sweet one. Such things begin to happen. Limbs get cold, people often break into a sweat, their legs hurt, they get confused, or a person often stumbles. There is always a sensation that someone is standing behind them and the person is constantly looking around. There is a sensation that someone is watching.
Exactly from behind?
Exactly from behind, usually, yes. At such moments, it is already possible to say that perhaps there is a necrotic attachment. A person starts having dreams about cemeteries, about some coffins. That is, the theme of death begins to be present in dreams. A person wonders, what happens after death? If I commit suicide, what awaits me there? These kinds of thoughts start coming. He begins to be in this state all the time. His energy is gone, he is sleepy all the time. When he gets up, he already has no energy. He seems to have slept, but he feels like he hasn't slept for a week. This way, little by little, a dead man is eating him energetically, so to say.
Until a person dies?
Until a person does what you want, for what you attach this dead man to him, or until he dies.
Zhanna, please tell us, who are the cemetery masters?
You know, there's an erroneous opinion, let me begin with it, that a master is the first person buried. In reality, it's an aggregate collective energy of death of a given cemetery. There is a fenced-in area. Everything beyond the area is the world of the living, while what is within the area of a graveyard or a cemetery itself is the world of the dead. At a certain point in time, such a collective accumulation of the energy of death is formed sort of a ball of energy. A master is this very collective energy which you address directly.
Does it inhabit this particular place?
Yes, this very place. Moreover, each burial place and each cemetery has its own master or mistress. As a rule, the mistress is death itself, which is addressed directly, while the master carries more masculine energy in him, and this can easily be determined. For example, when I come to an old village graveyard, I clearly feel the master there. I want to bring cigarettes or vodka, according to my inner sensations. When I worked in one of Moscow cemeteries, I came and I wanted to buy cookies and a black kerchief. So I realized that I should appeal to the mistress there. Moreover, a sensation arises several days before I go to a cemetery. They already know everything there. They are already waiting and know long before that you will go there and will bring something. Sometimes they ask. So the sensation that comes to my head doesn't just come from nothing. I never ate those cookies and suddenly I wanted to buy them. This way they show me that this is what I should buy.
Are you afraid when these wishes come?
Not anymore. In the beginning, it was certainly scary. You know how it was? Not that it was frightening, but there was a feeling. Is it my schizophrenia or reality? But when a dog or a cat leads you to the needed grave, when they show you a rare name that you need, you understand that it's not schizophrenia. They really hear you, they really lead you, and they really tell you what to buy.
Yet, let's say when a dog or cat leads you, do you feel your own power in that?
No. At the cemetery, I feel, generally speaking, it is advisable to realize that you are just a mediator between forces. When you start feeling your power, it's already an inflated sense of importance. Then you become stuck with this feeling and you may miss some important points. You may even be punished for that. Therefore, when you come to work in a graveyard, it's important to have a global respect for this place, to observe all the safety rules and to be careful with procurements and payoffs. You not just toss and dump out some items, but lay them carefully. It's like coming to someone else's home where you really respect all the rules. And I do understand that there is a force there that is many times more powerful than me, so I should deal with it respectfully. Not to be afraid, because you mustn't experience fear in such places. And when you already feel a contact, it means you are admitted to work in this cemetery. There are also cemetery guards. It's a separate topic. This exactly relates to cases when a person goes there, but he is not let in with his ritual. A pack of dogs appears that may bite him. Some drunken vagrant comes and starts bothering him, or a guard starts asking some questions. In other words, any kind of hindrance appears.
Who creates it?
That very collective force.
So it doesn't want to let a person in.
Right. You come, but they don't like you for some reason. In this cemetery, you are not accepted. Roughly speaking, they push you out, showing you that you are not welcome there.
You know, many people write on the internet, and people say when they come to a cemetery, they experience an unpleasant sensation. It's unpleasant for people in cemetery. Why can this happen?
Most likely, their frequencies do not match the frequency of the cemetery. Although a lot of people on the contrary feel warm, somehow cozy and calm there, many say, "Oh, I come to the cemetery and I can walk there for hours," while others suddenly start yawning or get sick. It means that the frequency present in the cemetery begins to oppress them. I actually don't recommend people to go to the cemeteries much. After all, what is living, while in cemeteries there are the dead, a lot of the dead. And in any case, the atmosphere there is such that just walking through a cemetery, a person doesn't feel the energy flowing out of him. He feels comfortable, calm, and very peaceful. There is a very viscid energy of peace, but after a while, that is, a person can feel so comfortable there that some people tell me I even want to lie down and fall asleep. It's so quiet and peaceful, but after a certain while, a person feels that he has been eaten at best. At worst, you can take someone with you from there.
Unconsciously?
Unconsciously.
But how do they...
Well, let's say a woman may come during her period. Some creatures will flock to the blood because it is energy, and blood energy is the best delicacy for them. A person can start crying too much, get emotional. While the energy of death often causes a person to cry emotionally, this is what I was talking about, what we work with. That is, a person can start crying to a relative at the cemetery and complain about his life. This mustn't be done. We can tell something to a relative, share what is going on in our life, but complaining about life is perceived in a different way in such places. So there are many various nuances where you can catch someone and walk away with a settler, let's say, with a necrotic attachment. Therefore, excessive emotionality in cemeteries, especially, I repeat, at children's graves, is very dangerous.
Zhanna, can you recall, if it happened, of course, some of the most shocking cases you had in your practice of graveyard magic?
Shocking exactly in the cemetery?
Well, you know, shocking or surprising, which surprised you very much.
Yes, there was such a thing. It happened next to my summer house. There was a young man who helped everyone in the summer. He worked cutting grass for some people or doing something else. He was from an orphanage. People built a little hut for him and he lived there all year round. He must have been saving up some money. And one spring day, they found him hanged in that hut. I had no contact with him at all. I just occasionally heard something about him. Hello, goodbye. I wasn't friends with him. So they acknowledged him as hanged. I didn't know where he was buried. Once, out of the blue, I had a dream. I dreamt about this guy with whom we weren't friends at all, and he told me that he had been hanged, showing details in my dream. It turned out they came to him and looked for the money he was saving. He didn't give it to them, so they just hanged him and found the money. He told me all this in my dream. I told it to my relatives, who are also connected with that summer house. Everyone was certainly shocked. Later on, in summer, my husband and I went to an old cemetery. I went to the graveyard to work there. I entered, made offerings to the master, asked for something, turned around and saw a monument at a distance with a skull on it. I logically understood that in no way someone could have glued a skull there instead of a photograph. I walked across the cemetery to this grave, approached it, and saw that instead of a skull, there was a picture of that guy who had been hanged. I didn't know where he was buried. Several years had passed. I want to point out it was 2 or 3 years after he had hung himself or had been hanged. So the master showed me this guy, and the story he told me in my dream came together into kind of a jigsaw puzzle. He was really buried a little bit outside the cemetery, and his grave was shown to me with a skull. This was shocking to me, because of all the graveyards around our area, I came to that particular one, where I was clearly led to the grave of the guy I had dreamt about. Such a thing happened to me for the first time. I realized that my task was to tell people that he hadn't done it himself, but had been killed.
And so after that, he never came back.
He didn't come after that. I cleaned his grave as appropriate. If the master brought me there, I had to respect the place. I cleaned his grave, and I clearly told everyone afterwards, remember that guy, Igor? He was murdered. He didn't hang himself. That was the moment. Such moments are shocking because when a voice sounds or something else, it is scary. But when there is a chain of events like that, you really understand that some kind of force is interacting with you.
So this is your main business now, isn't it?
The main one is that now I deal more with diagnostics of people. I hold personal appointments. I don't work remotely at all, and sometimes I work with graveyards.
What methods of work do you use at personal meetings?
Cards.
Cards?
Yes. I rarely take people for cleaning. I mostly work on power days, holidays of the wheel of the year, pagan holidays, so to say. And rarely do I take people for cleaning, but mostly I diagnose difficult situations where I help people to find a way out of the situations that torture them and to see the underlying generic causes. Moreover, I often tell a person what their task is.
And you understand all of that by means of cards, don't you?
Yes, exactly.
Mantex is working with cards?
Yes, Mantex is a predictive system. There may be pendulums, biolocation frames, cards, or runes, whatever is more convenient for people.
Does this tool influence anything, or is it just an attribute?
What do you mean, cards?
I mean cards, frames, and...
You know, it's mediator. It's your tool. It's a tool through which I connect to the information field. It is comfortable for me. I need to connect. I need to enter the state of flow. When I lay out cards, I connect to a person, and when I already see that I enter the flow, sometimes I basically don't even look at the cards anymore.
How would you describe this state of flow, like an altered state of consciousness?
Yes, it is sort of, an alpha state. I feel it as a kind of vacuum that begins to appear around me, and I stop hearing other extraneous sounds. Even if someone is drilling something outside the window, there are some noises, all of them sort of dissolve, and I realize that's it. I enter the flow. It is such a slight state of vacuum.
At this moment, you begin to see or feel something, right?
Right, to see, to read information, to feel, but mostly it is sort of a sensation of some slipping phrases in my head. I mean, it's not a sound, but like magazine clippings right in front of my eyes.
Like a telegram.
Yes, like a telegram flies by. That's a very similar comparison. And when I start telling a person, he answers yes. meaning he confirms something. Then I realize that I have entered this flow. Then I don't even have to look at the person, I look at the cards. But that's it, information is coming.
And you just put it together in a holistic picture, right?
Right, in a holistic picture. Basically, I always start by looking at the past. I'm an ardent opponent of looking into the future. I never look into the future.
And why?
For many reasons. First of all, the future has many variations. Secondly, there are emergent events, and there is a formed series of events. And there are other nuances. You look at the person who is doing well now, but then someone ruins him, and his entire life vector changes. Some of his paths are blocked, and his future changes.
What do you mean by someone ruins him?
Well, let's say I looked at a person. He has competitors in business, and they made him a magic roadblock, or some kind of a Robin spell or curse. Correspondingly, they blocked some energy centers for this person, and some areas in his life started falling apart. Therefore, everything I would tell him about the future, which I see only as forming events, would not be correct at all. Also, a person can have several roads. If he chooses this road, the development of events will follow one scenario. If he chooses another road, the scenario will be different. When we speak of a person's future, we deprive him of this choice. In other words, we present something to him as determined. Our psyche works in such a way that even if we reject something, we will still give ourselves an internal directive to that. That's why I believe that a person must not be given any directives to certain events. He must choose on his own.
Is it because you deprive him of a choice?
I deprive him of a choice. So when a person comes to me, we start with his past. Then I proceed to the present in order to understand how the past is reflected in a given series of events that has been formed. And then I give him variations. I tell him what will happen if he goes this way and how events will develop in the long run if he goes the other way. A person leaves retaining his right of choice, where I have clearly laid out what will happen and how. If I tell a woman that in the future she will have a husband, children, and so on, and she, let's say, is already married now, she will begin to get fixated. Why did she see that I will have a husband? It means I'm going to be divorced. There are many of such moments when self-suggestion begins in a person. Therefore, I don't want to take this kind of responsibility, and I think...
Is it a responsibility?
Yes, of course.
For a person?
For a person, yes. It's not even a responsibility. You can ruin a person's life. You can see the events that lie ahead of him, but he has to learn his own lesson. By voicing this to him, I deprive him of an opportunity to learn this lesson on his own. I can be punished for interfering in his life without the consent of a higher force, so to say. In other words, I disclose the information which he shouldn't know so far or shouldn't know at all. There are a lot of nuances here too. That's why I always give a person the right to choose and voice different ways. What will happen if he goes one way or another?
How do you understand what a person mustn't be told? Does this also come in the form of some images?
It may come in images, or sometimes when I start speaking, I, get hiccups, or I begin to speak and get a sharp spasm, as if my breathing is blocked. At such moments, I clearly understand that certain forces are directly preventing me from saying it. Sometimes I see certain combinations of cards that tell me right now, no, I mustn't say it.
Maybe you can show us the cards for the sake of interest. Let's say, how do you see if you are not allowed to speak?
There are different combinations, but I'll start by saying that I'm not a tarotist. I work with 36-sheet playing cards. Often in such a layout, I have the 8 of spades as an overlap and the Jack of spades, all empty.
Did you somehow determine for yourself this particular card?
Yes, sure. It's when you already have experience with the layout of cards. For example, this combination shows that something mustn't be said. There is a blockage. Everything is empty, which means you should keep silent in the conversation.
Are these some special cards you have?
These are ordinary playing cards just with engravings.
Do you work with the same deck for many years or change them from time to time?
This is my main deck. There are 4 other decks. One I use to diagnose negativity. This one is general, so to say, where I identify various social and domestic problems. And there are some other decks where I look at health and explicitly love stuff.
Love stuff means when people want to cast a spell?
Yes, it means relationships, when they ask, look, if we'll be together, and so on.
Is that a frequently asked question?
That's the first question. Personal life is a number one issue in terms of the number of requests from people. Many people have unsettled personal lives. My approach is to understand the reason why a personal life is unsettled and to eliminate that reason rather than to bind a man and a woman together by force. A woman may not be able to build a relationship with any man because of some inner blocks or ancestral background. That's why I always look through the past and seek for the root of the problem, because it is better to fix what triggered it rather than to look only at some superficial symptoms.
Zhanna, please tell us, there is an interesting point which is not quite clear. Look, you said that you work at low frequencies and that you're comfortable. When swear words are and things like that are pouring out of you,
yes.
And at the same time, you work with people solving their personal problems, you help them understand what kind of blocks they have and so on. Meanwhile, as you said that you naturally strive for love and the family, how does all of this correlate with each other? Aren't these things mutually exclusive?
Absolutely not. Do you know how it works? You have to come to inner harmony. Whatever frequencies you're on, I'm in awareness.
In awareness?
Yes, in awareness. I realize that I am drawn to low-frequency entities and low-frequency work. Unawareness is when a person, let's say, drinks alcohol heavily. In other words, he doesn't even realize that he is destroying and killing himself. Emotions take him over. Being in awareness, I have the upper hand over emotions. That is why certainly love in the family is not alien to me. And in general, what love is. This concept is not alien to me. As for my clients, I treat them like patients, which means I have equanimity and a clear barrier. I have turned off empathy, and for me, a person is an object that I interact with and help with something. I don't like making friends with clients. I don't like to empathize in any way because it may be dangerous. First of all, you can pull negativity onto yourself from a person. And secondly, you can see a problem in a distorted way. In other words, when you delve too deep into a person's problem, you empathize with him. You see through his emotionality. Thus, you will see on the cards everything he thinks. So you should totally abstract from any feelings or emotions and look at a person in cold blood.
It turns out that when you see cards, as you said, do you see thoughts? They come as telegrams, or is it some kind of images that come? How do you feel about that?
It happens that I enter a flow and see the cards as if through a haze. I practically don't see what images are in front of me. And that's it. I get information in such fragments like telegrams. Yet, there are times when I can clearly read the meaning of cards, but that's rarer. That is, when a person has some kind of protection, for example, ancestral protection. He comes, but there is some kind of a family guardian behind him, covering him up. So it's very difficult for me to see him on the cards. Then I start looking through the meaning of the cards. Sometimes I have to weaken a person's protection by certain manipulations in order to open and see him.
To make him unprotected?
Yes, so that he would be open and I could penetrate deep into him.
Does the person feel that?
He does. It often happens that if a person comes to find out about another person, then during the reception, when I connect to him, the other one starts calling or texting him. I probably had this happen 20 times. For instance, a woman came who didn't communicate with a particular person in any way for 6 months. What should I do? What should I do next? I started looking at him, connecting through her, and all of a sudden she said, Zhanna, I'm in shock, he's calling me right now. Or in the hallway she called a taxi and said, Zhanna, he's texting me now. So there are many such moments and you can see it with the naked eye.
How do you feel that you have connected to a person?
Basically, I see his or her element. Let's say if I come into contact with a person, I say, your element is air. And he says, yes, I'm Aquarius. Then I feel that I'm connected. Afterwards, as I already said, a vacuum begins, such a sensation as if I'm in some kind of information flow. It's like I'm on tracks and I'm riding. That's when it goes.
On the tracks of a person?
Yes.
And you said that you had set a taboo to feel anything, that any empathy is out of question.
Empathy has nothing to do with this. I enter the energy flow and read the information field around this particular person. I don't care about his emotions at this moment. Some things make people start crying because all people are alive and have emotions. When I talk, I touch some strings of their soul and people start crying. I just keep it instantly. It doesn't linger inside me. I don't feel compassion. I don't start hugging. If I get confused and begin to empathize in any way, I will immediately get out of the flow.
Zhanna, can you tell us more about the tools you work with and how it works in general? I see that you've brought some items with you. Perhaps you can share how you work with them.
Yes. Well, look, if we take my pot. I found this pot on a shelf at home. It used to belong to my father, who did something with it, probably related to repairs or something else. So why do I use this pot? Why did I take it for myself as an attribute? Mostly for fumigation. I certainly don't make any potions or brews of herbs. But if I fume a room, I burn herbs, put them in the pot, and just walk around. Accordingly, it smokes and fumigates the room, and it is comfortable for me. So this thing serves mainly for fumigation. It's very convenient. As for my ritual knife, there is another kind of work I do with it. Everything that is connected with cutting bonds from a person. If there is a road blockage, if I clean someone, I put the knife between me and the person as a protection. I cut off some protective elements during cleaning, then through the knife I remove everything from myself. So I work with it during my practice, and I will never cut sandwiches with it, let's say.
Is this some kind of special knife, or why exactly is this one specifically?
Its handle is made of natural bone. There is biological material here. That's why I work with it. There is no other special feature. In other words, the knife is the same tool. It's important what kind of intention we put into it and for what purposes. I didn't make any initiations to either the knife or the cards. I think it is nonsense, because if you work and have power and abilities, you don't need to initiate anything anywhere, and you don't need to initiate yourself. Thus, your tools are the same as in the kitchen, where you are good at using a frying pan and cooking. The same is in this case. If we do our job well, then we can take a knife or can take a stick. The stick will work the same way.
You already given us some hints about the cards, maybe a few more words.
Basically, the cards have different combinations that you can look at. When I do any kind of layout, I always attribute a person to a certain king or a queen, and each area of activity is also shown in some suit. The king or queen of hearts is a married man or a woman. The king or queen of clubs is an elderly person. A young one is that of diamonds. Afterwards, I do the layout. In the beginning, I always do a big layout, a cross. Many people know it. It is such an old layout on the playing cards. With a cross layout, I look at everything related to a person, some moments in his or her life, from his or her past, and so on. I always start with this layout for connecting. Through a big layout, the very first one, I connect to a person, and only then I make spot layouts for a specific question. A question must sound properly. It's not like either or, but we ask a question clearly. Will this happen or not? Are we moving in the right direction? Is there any negative influence on the person? And through separate layouts, I see answers to some questions.
And this little book, is it some kind of your...
It's my grimoire. It contains incantations that came to me in my dreams many years ago. I also wrote them down here. All of this I do completely with my own hands. Poker work, screwing, and fastening. I mostly connect while working. Information that I voice as an incantation part just comes to me. If I get out of the flow, I will not remember half of what I said.
Does it mean you write everything down in the process?
I don't write, but when I perform a ritual, speech flows out of me right in the process. Certain words, locks, and keys in the incantation. Keys are keywords contained in the incantation. Locks are something that closes. It's the final part when we close our incantation so that no one would remove it or interrupt it, and so on. But there are also incantations that I inherited from someone. My sister conveys them to me, and there are incantations which I saw in my dreams. So this grimoire contains everything that I need. There are certain layouts that I have drawn. It's a book specifically for...
Is it the most valuable item among all the artifacts?
Yes, we can say so too.
How many years have you been keeping it?
Well, the oldest one is the knife. It is almost 11 years old. The grimoire is only 2 years old, but I copied everything there from some old notebooks.
Is it the only volume, or do you have more?
No, it's only one.
And you supplement it all the time?
I supplement it from time to time, but I'll repeat. If I perform a ritual and there is no clear action specified in the ritual, this speech, which can be recorded on a tape recorder, usually just flows out of me. But if I get out of this flow, I cannot remember what I said and cannot write it down.
Have you tried recording yourself?
Yes, I tried it once. It was very interesting, but I think this incantation was powerful exactly at the moment it came to me. I mean, when this information comes out of me, right out of my mouth, it does have some power. If I write it down, I don't think it will work the next time. The same situation is when people pass their incantations on to each other. If it works for one master, there's no guarantee that it will work for another.
Is it probably connected somehow energetically?
Yes, everyone inputs their own message, their own desire, their own key, a key point, an appeal to a certain force or tradition. So it is individual for everyone.
I wonder how you determine personal strengths. How do you feel whether you are strong or weak at a particular moment? And when you are weak, how do you gain strength?
If I'm weak, I feel it on the physical level. I feel drowsiness, apathy, and loss of strength.
Does this include magic powers too?
Magic powers as well. It happens that through dreams, I'm shown that my defense has been breached. I always have the same dream. It's when somebody tries to break down my front door. In other words, if someone breaks into my door and there is a hole in it instead of a lock, it's 100% astral attack on me. Someone is influencing me, and they are trying to break my defense. That's how they signal to me in my dreams. Then I strengthen my defense. I recover only through nature, walking barefoot on the ground, lighting fire, bonfire. I replenish myself most quickly through nature.
Let's say you walk barefoot on the ground in the park, or if it's winter and you make a fire. Do you think about anything or just keep walking?
I try to turn off the inner dialogue and imagine that roots are sprouting out of me into the ground. This is sort of grounding, let's say a grounding practice. And I imagine that all negativity that is in me goes straight into the ground. I say, Mother Earth, I appeal to you, take away all the negativity I have on me, and I embrace trees. Thus it happens in different ways.
Any trees?
I mostly like to embrace pines. Pine is quite a powerful tree for cleaning, and I also use pine buds for candles. I'm not attracted to birches, although many people like them. Birch is completely alien to me for some reason. In other words, replenishment comes through nature, and of course, I constantly restore protection, because when working with clients, it is necessary. Moreover, if somebody did something to a client and I start cleaning it, it is doubly necessary.
You clean yourself, as you said, because someone breaches your defenses. Why would anyone want that at all?
When you work at certain frequencies, these entities see you, and when you work with the astral plane, that's where they dwell. Any witch has more energy than an ordinary person. The energy reserve is higher, and they are interested in your energy. They want to devour it. Accordingly, they break protection just to eat it. They can come in the guise of a relative, a blood relative, and so on, but I can distinguish them at once by certain moments in the dream. That is, an entity that came in a certain mask. But mostly they come to devour because this energy is interesting to them.
So it turns out that you constantly protect yourself from them.
Constantly, yes. Well, how to put it? There is a protection that is set for a certain while. I stipulate it and renew it every time. There is nothing eternal, and it's impossible to set protection once and for all.
Zhanna, tell us please, you shared a very interesting example that your front door is being broken down. In your opinion, who or what gives you those hints?
Most often, it's my ancestral protection. This way, my kin signals that I'm being penetrated.
Relatives?
Relatives are a wrong concept. The lineage system is like a huge egregore, like a collective. In cemeteries, there is a master and there is also a kin. It's an integral part of a person. And if there is an ancestral protection, since I work with the kin, I give a constant nourishment to my ancestral system, and it also gives me something in return. So when I get penetrated, mostly the door is shown, or one of my departed family members warns me or comes directly.
Is it always deceased people?
Always, yes.
Zhanna, after you perform some ritual or enter an altered state of consciousness, how do you feel afterwards?
If I precisely work through a certain force or attract some element, I only feel better. After some energy practice or ritual, I feel elevated. This indicates that I'm not using my personal power. Because if I call for some forces, appeal to them, and feel a decline in power, it means they haven't come to me. They haven't heard me, and I stupidly use up my energy. Sometimes I feel emptied after receiving difficult, psychologically unstable people, or people who are generally difficult to perceive. There can be energy devastation, and I want to wash my face and rinse my hands up to elbows. There are such moments when I want to cleanse myself right away.
Which elements do you mean, like fire and water?
Yes, air, earth.
And let's say in case of graveyard magic, does it happen in a different way?
In graveyard magic, I address through the work, through the master, through access to the energy of the dead. There shouldn't be a loss of strength there either.
So basically, always after...
There has to be either a neutral state or even an elevation, because when you feel a loss of strength after rituals, it means something went wrong. You've been eaten or wasted your energy. That's my personal experience. Of course, if a ritual lasts for several hours, I feel physical fatigue. I can speak for a long time, reciting some incantation 70 times. Sometimes it happens. And I'm just tired on the physical level, but energy fatigue is different from physical fatigue.
In which way, roughly?
Well, how to say, physical fatigue is like cleaning a house. You want to sit down and rest. While energy fatigue is a sleepy state. You want to lie down and fall asleep. You are unable to raise your hand. Your body becomes heavy, and there is a mass in your head. That's what energy exhaustion is.
Zhanna, could you please tell us how you work with the people? Let's say a dead man or someone else connects to a person. How does this happen? Through one's thought, emotions, or through what?
Basically, involvement starts with thoughts. A person begins to be drawn somewhere where he will a priori feel bad. He can approach some company, ask for a cigarette, and they will beat him up. Or he will go and get drunk so much that he will fall asleep somewhere and will be robbed. In other words, it begins with the insertion of an alien thought into a person's head, and due to this thought, a person starts acting. So there is a chain that starts with a thought and everything ends at the physical level.
Also, for example, a client comes to you and says, I have an acquaintance and I want to do this and this to him. How do you impact that person if you basically haven't seen him yet?
Well, I don't do such things anymore. When I used to do it, I did it through demons.
Do you need a photo, a name, or something else for that?
I definitely needed a person's photo, and in the rarest cases, I had to hear his or her voice. I could call a person on the phone as if I had the wrong number, and it was enough for me to hear his or her voice.
When you have a person's photo, hear his voice, and let's say you know his name, do you form some kind of image of this person?
I catch his energy trail. It is such a thing, invisible thread. I mean, I visualize this person, his image, his mental imprint. I visualize a thin thread from him to me, an energy channel. And I already shove or tie into this channel whatever I want. If we consider it associatively, that's what it roughly looks like.
So you find a person somewhere in the world of energies?
Yes, sort of on the astral plane.
Does he feel anything at that moment? What do you think?
Well, he may have a flush or a fever, or a person may stumble suddenly or begin to wander in speech. This can happen. When you work through dark forces, a person often wakes up at a certain hour during the night. While working with a person, it is especially done on holidays, because on holidays, a person usually drinks alcohol. On the New Year Eve or on the 8th of March. And you purposely wait for these holidays in order to weaken his energy, to weaken his natural or ancestral protection and begin to work on him.
So when the person is drunk, he...
Yes, definitely.
Does the amount of alcohol matter?
Sure. If a person is drunk, he sleeps. He has no control over himself. He loses awareness. So he's already vulnerable. Basically, alcohol lowers vibrations instantly, then it is easier to work. It is easier to attach an entity, and it is easier to take possession of a person's mind.
Does it mean that it's more difficult to influence a person if he keeps his thoughts in purity?
Yes, absolutely. When faced with various religions, it is very difficult to influence Muslims. They are in a constant connection with the egregore. They do namaz every day and read prayers on a daily basis. They are constantly under some kind of a dome, so it is very difficult to influence them. When you start impacting a person, he begins to address in a prayer. Indeed, many of them are very different from those who come to church only when everything is bad in their life. They come to pray, and then for 5 years they forget about God, some canons, and so on. Muslims, as a rule, passionately believe and passionately give energy to their egregore, and this egregore protects them very well. That's why it is very difficult to work to make any kind of influence on a true Muslim believer.
Is this some kind of a good egregore?
Well, for them, yes. This egregore is good for adepts who contribute good energy to it.
How do you sense it? For instance, you have found an energy trace of such person. What's next? Do you try to drag him somehow to visualize this threat and you fail? Or how do you do that?
It disappears. I cannot get a grip on it. I focus on it, but something immediately knocks me out of the flow, just like that. Or I visualize a person in front of me clearly and can affect him even at a mental level, but some image is not created in my mind at all. I even look at a photo, reproduce an image, but it vanishes from my mind. Thus, I can clearly see that a person is covered with something.
Does this only work with Muslims?
It does for me. Nowadays, there are very few people among Christians who truly believe. Even those who write in their comments that God is in the soul, that they are all faithful believers, but in reality they are not. Even most often they write that all this is a sin, but then ask in a private message how to make a rubbing spell. Such cases also happen.
A rubbing spell?
A rubbing spell.
What is it?
It means pulling off luck or some benefits, beauty, money, success. In other words, pulling off something good from another person. There is shifting when we dump some crap on someone else, and there is pulling when we take something good from another person.
Zhanna, could you please tell us if there are people to whom you cannot connect or influence them by various magic methods in any way?
There are such people. If there is ritual protection on a person, it's not even possible to connect through cards. If someone has put ritual protection over him, or if an entity is in a person's service, it is also difficult to do that. It happens that a person has a strong ancestral protection. He has a powerful, prosperous, rich kin from generation to generation, and even looking at the cards, you cannot read information from him. He is covered as impenetrable. It happens.
You touched upon an interesting point that when a person experiences strong emotion, he opens up to the invisible world. But what if a person diligently works on himself, controls himself, and doesn't even allow any of the low qualities to manifest? Does it mean that he belongs to a category of people to whom it's impossible to do anything by means of magic rituals?
Nothing is impossible. There are difficulties. There are points that you've mentioned where it would be difficult to work with such a person. It would take a lot of manipulation to break his will. This is energy consuming, and not every practitioner will be breaking through that door for so long. Someone will just say, hell with it, he doesn't give in. There are such cases.
Is it possible that he will never give in? Did you have such cases in your practice?
I had once. There was a man who didn't give in at all. He felt a strong impact but didn't give in.
Were you personally acquainted with him, or did you get his photo, roughly speaking?
No, how to say, it was an order, but I met this person once. That man was an athlete, very hard-tempered, and he had self-control, a really tough one. Athletes and military men may have such a temper. His willpower was at such a level that it was very difficult to work with him, even through evil spirits. In the end, I refused.
Self-control at the level of emotions, right?
Yes, discipline, self-control. The man controlled and distinguished his thoughts from alien ones. Hazes had no effect on him. He was fully aware. Such people are very difficult to work with. There are such people indeed.
What do you mean by the word awareness?
When a person understands that something is wrong with him, that he goes against his principles. Let's say he will never cheat on his wife. He has the principle that if there is one, then it's forever. I attach an entity that pushes him. You should cheat. You should sleep with that female client. And his principles definitely take over. That's what awareness is about. A person doesn't succumb to any provocations that are imposed on him and intended to break his will.
But if someone is already attached to him, can these principles not be of his own?
That's exactly where awareness comes in. You realize, how come these principles not be mine my whole life?
You mean, who am I, right?
Right. I lived my whole life with this. Where do these thoughts come from? When a person begins to turn on such a protective element, he immediately weakens the effect of an entity or a haze.
A protective element is a search for oneself, isn't it?
Yes, it means to be on. You know, it's like hypnosis. When they begin to put us into hypnosis, but we catch this moment and start reciting a poem in our mind, for example, we thus immediately interrupt the state of induced hypnosis. The same is true when working with magic. When a person begins to realize that something is wrong with him, delve into himself, try to control his emotions and follow his principles. It is very difficult to work with him.
Zhanna, during our conversation, you repeatedly mentioned connection with some forces. If it's not a secret, what was your contract about? I mean, what do you pay with for possessing this power?
This mustn't be disclosed. What I paid off to this force is forbidden to talk about. But I can say that a person who concluded a contract, if we are speaking of dark forces, and who knows what he will pay with, by calling this force, he does crap through it and brings necessary energy into this egregore. I mean, it's also an egregore, only it feeds on a different energy. The more crap I do, the more people I involve. You know, it's like bring a friend and you'll get a bonus. It works in this case. The more people renounce the cross because of me and turn away from the church, the more energy I bring into that egregore, the more it will give me. But in the end, yes, I will pay something. Yet while doing these evil deeds, I take money from people. They eventually leave with a result. I have their money, and this egregore gets a portion of crap from me, which I have done to somebody. That's the chain.
Did you know that at the time of concluding the contract?
Not exactly.
But you stipulated in advance what would you pay with, didn't you?
Well, let's say I was deceived. That is why I'll repeat again, when people unknowingly get into it, it always ends badly.
And there is nothing you can do about that?
Not anymore. I've already paid.
So all the conditions have been fulfilled.
I've paid in full, so to say. That's the only reason I left this egregore, because I lost everything, the most precious I had. Payment due came at the moment when I began to renounce it. Since you quit, go ahead and pay.
Is it actually scary to live?
To live? Well, how to put it? It depends on what you're afraid of.
So much around.
Speaking about practice, I can say that when I buried my entire family, life became much easier. In the sense that there is nothing I can be afraid of losing. As a rule, people are afraid to live if they are not completely selfish. They are worried about their relatives and friends. They are afraid of losing what is most precious. That is probably the fear of a normal person who really loves someone and feels something. When you have nothing to lose, this fear disappears and you already realize that you are alone, one-on-one with yourself, and in fact, you've already passed the threshold of fear, which could be worse for you. To a certain extent, the absence of fear gives you strength. You stop being afraid of living, dying, and so on.
Zhanna, what advice would you give to our viewers who might be afraid of some impact of the invisible world? Well, and just to people who would like to live happily in well-being and in peace of mind and so on.
I wish such people not to break the balance. If you want others to do you good, don't do crap to others either. Because as a rule, there is no boomerang. There is balance. Think positively, because often people start telling themselves, I cannot do that, I won't make it, this is my destiny. No, you should think positively, you should attract good things into your life with your intention. Raise your vibrations, go in for sports, spend more time in nature, energize your life in every way. Don't live like in a Groundhog Day. You come home from work, eat, hang out somewhere on the weekend, and go back to work. You should develop, read, educate yourself, develop spiritually, maintain your physical shape. I mean, all this together. I can advise people to just take care of themselves, of their life, and bring only the best into it.
Zhanna, thank you so much for coming to our studio. It's been a big pleasure talking to you.
For me, it's also a great pleasure visiting you. I hope I answered some of the questions. Thank you.
Dear friends, if you have any questions, please send them to our email. You will find it in the description below. This was Shadow Control. We wish you all the best.